ring for you. I'm calling this the cluster ring, and the ring is going to be using a little bit of a netting technique, working with both seed beads and some round beads. If you need any of the materials to do this cluster ring, we have the little eye in the top hand corner if you scroll over that, which will have links to purchase online, or below the video there's always a description and a time date that says when the video was produced. If you hit the show more button down there, it'll give links that you can purchase the different products from us online at PotomacBeads.com. In her ring, Anna used the faceted labradorite and some carnelian 3mm rounds to give this a nice kind of organic gemstone, very Anna look, as I would say, the very kind of muted gemstone colors. I'm going to be blinging it up a little bit and using some 3mm rounds in the Swarovski crystal. So I have some 3mm rounds in a variety of purpley pink colors ranging from fuchsia, rose, tanzanite, and amethyst that I'm going to be mixing in this cluster ring here. In addition to the 3mm round beads, you are going to need some 15-0 seed beads. The 15-0 seed beads are going to sit between the round beads and act as our connector between all of our rows. In addition to the 15s, we need some 11-0s, which are going to be our band. In her band here and the 15s, Anna used the Duracoat Galvanized Gold in the Miyuki seed bead. I'm going to be using Miyuki brand as well, but I'm using that nice 15-0 in the Duracoat Galvanized Sage Green here, and then I have the metallic light bronze in my 11-0. I think it's going to give it a little bit of kind of a floral or a flower patch look when you go from using the gemstones to using the bright crystals with the green. To string the whole thing, I am going to be using some green wildfire in 0.006, and that's going to have a nice color to it for blending in with my 15-0s, which are going to be right along the top. I will see a little bit of the green along the sides here, just like you can see in Anna's version, and it's not going to bother me a ton because when it's on, you really don't see that at all. The whole thing is going to be strung with a size 12 needle. You can use a 10 or a 12 needle. I have a 12 sitting here, so that's what I will use. And I also have sitting handy always my thread zap or thread burner. That's going to work to burn the thread off the spool, as well as to burn the little thread edges down as we finish up the project. You may also want some super new glue handy to glue the knot towards the back of the project, and also a needle nose or a flat nose pliers to flatten out the end of the thread as we go in and get ready to thread our needle. To get started, we are going to start with our cluster section here. And once we have the cluster section, then we'll go on and get ready to actually create our band section. So we're going to dump out little piles of each of our seed beads and cut about 4 feet of our wildfire beading thread. So I have my beads all poured out here, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually make a stop bead on the bottom of my thread. I put a bead that's not on the actual project, which is just an 11-0 green seed bead, and I'm going to run the needle through it 2 times, leaving about a 2 to 3 inch tail at the base. This bead eventually is going to come off the project, but it's just going to hang out there now to stop the beads from falling off. We're going to be starting the ring in the cluster with a very kind of simple collection of our beads. So our pattern is going to go that we are going to be doing this baseline here. As I turn the ring around, you can kind of see it. We're going to be putting on a 15, 2 11s, a 15, and then our gemstone or our round. So I have my 15, my 2 11s, a 15, and then just at random I'm picking up one of my colors of my 3mm. After that, I'm going to do that same pattern of the 15, 2 11s, and a 15, and add another one of my beads here. As I let them drop down, I'm going to recognize that the pattern is starting here. The pattern, like I said, is just kind of picking that starting point, and we're going to be adding 5 of our base beads here. So we have our 4 base beads. That we have 2 on each side that we'll be using. In between those beads eventually is where we're also going to hook in our actual band. So I have 2 on, I'm going to add 2 more and make sure that I have that seed bead rotation in between. So again, it's 1 of your crystals or 1 of your rounds, depending on if you're using the gemstones or the crystals, a 15, 2 of your 11-0 seed beads, and then a 15. And then I'll do another one of my crystals. Now I started with my seed beads, so I'm going to end with my crystal. From here, I'm going to go back toward that stop bead and go through my whole row of beads again, coming out after the second crystal that I added. So you can see kind of that makes the base. So I'm coming out of that second crystal after going around through the seed beads, the first crystal, and the seed beads. Coming out then after exiting that first crystal. From here, we're going to start almost a netting or a triangular weave. The first thing we're going to do, though, is create the base for it to sit on. So we have our outer ring here, and then we're going to start our triangle. Before starting the triangle, I want to make a nice flat base, which is going to sit well on the actual wrist. To start the base, it is going to be 5 of our 15 OC beads that sit above each of my 3mm round. Those 5 seed beads are going to sit with my thread and needle coming out of my 11 OC beads. So to start, I'm going to go through the 15 and come out the 2 11 OC beads. From here, we add 5 of our 15 OC beads. So I'm adding 5 of those. And then once I have those 5, I'm skipping over to my group of 2 11 O's. So these are going to look like they're sitting right on the inside of the project. So you see those kind of sitting right on the inside. Coming out the 11 O's then, we add 5 more of our 15s and go to the next section of 11s and sew through both 11 OC beads. This is going to put 20 new 15 OC beads on the project. There's going to be 5 sitting kind of above each of our crystals. So once I have those 5 on, then I'm going to go through the 11 OC beads here and out. And let those kind of sit. If they sit off to the exterior, don't worry about it. We're going to be pulling them in. I have my 5 seed beads on here then again. And once I have those 5 seed beads on, I'm going to go through the 2 original 11 OC beads that my thread and needle were coming out of. That completes this rotation of using those 5 seed beads in order to get that nice flat base. From here, I'm going to go to the middle of each of those 5 seed beads to the 3rd bead that we added and add an 11 O between each. So your thread and needle are coming out the 11s. I'm going to sew up through the 15s, coming out the 3rd 15 in that first row. From here, pick up an 11 O seed bead, jump over to the next grouping of 5 there, pick up the 3rd bead in the group of 5 or the center bead and sew through it. This is going to bring that netting down in towards a V. Add another 11 O after coming out that central 3rd bead and then switch over to the next 3rd bead. Give a nice tight pull here, and that's going to pull them all in towards the center. And you can see it's even making kind of a pretty almost beaded bead. We're going to add in another 11 and go to the 3rd center here. That adds in 3 beads. You can see if you pull your project, then you have 1 more bead that you need to add in and go through that first grouping of 5 through that center bead. That creates that nice flat surface that you're going to have right along your hand or along your finger. I'm going to reinforce that center row that we just did, sewing around 1 more time. So I'm going the whole way around all 8 beads that are in the center. The 4 that I just added in the 11 O, and then the 1 15 O that sits in the middle of that grouping of 5. So I'm sewing around in a circle, picking up all of those center beads. That'll also, in addition to making it nice and tight there, make it look nice and even as well. From this point then, after coming out of 15O, along the side here, we are actually finished with the actual baseline. So from here, finishing with the baseline, we are going to go in then and get ready to add on to the top of the design. So what we just finished here was that nice little X section there. And we're going to get ready to add in some more of our crystals along the top in that netted or kind of that right angle weave style. From here, we need to get our thread and needle out towards the outside of the project so we can build up. To do so, after coming out of that 15, I want you to go through 2 of the side beads in that same grouping of 5 15s. So that same green 15s there. We're going to go through 2, coming out then after those 2, you're going to go through your 11 O's with 15, a crystal, and a 15. We're going to be doing a similar netting version as we did along the bottom to make that nice little surface, but instead of actually going around, we're going to be kind of circling. The way that we're going to do that is we are going to add a crystal, a 15, a crystal, and then go back in to create a grouping of 3 here with a 15 in between each. So I'm coming out of 15 here. I'm going to add a crystal, a 15, and I'm not worrying about which colors I'm picking up. A crystal. So I've done crystal, 15 crystal. Going back to that same crystal, 15 crystal set that your thread is coming out of, you're going to take your needle in a circular fashion through those beads. That's going to put those 3 beads that we just added, the crystal, 15 crystal, on the outer edge. Spinning around then to the next kind of corner, go through the 11, the 15, the crystal, move that stop bead off to the side, and come out through the 15. Coming out the 15 now, it's time to add 3 more beads again. A crystal, 15, crystal. Circling around then, I'm going to go through those 3 beads that my thread is coming out of, the 15, crystal, 15. Over to the next section, go through the 11s, and then also through the 3 beads that are going to be included in this little triangle that we're creating. Coming out the little triangle, add a crystal, seed bead, and a crystal, and so back through those 3 beads. And that puts that little triangle on that corner. From here, 1 more grouping gets added, going through the 11s, once I'm through the 11s, ooh, got a little twist there. Once you're through the 11s then, we're going to add our final, we have the added final little grouping of 3 triangle beads that we'll add. So after I'm coming out the 11 or the 15 and the round in the 15, add my last grouping here of my triangle. And after those 3 beads are on, so back through the 15, crystal 15. That gets my top beads on. As you can see, it kind of forms a little bit that the beads want to stick up in a dome, which is what we're going to do as we add in another bead into the grouping. So we have the triangles here along the side that we've created right there, and we're going to go in and connect all of those triangles with 4 more beads along the top. So along the top now, we're going to do a little bit of a right angle weave. We need to get to the outer edge, to these 15 O seed beads that connect all of our triangles that sit on the side. To do so, I'm going to go back through one of the 3 millimeter crystals and come out the 15 along the top of the last triangle that I made. From here, I'm going to do almost a right angle weave, picking up 3 more 15 O's, and I'm going to circle around that bead that I just came out of. So I'm circling around through the 15 O seed bead after adding 3 seed beads, which is going to make almost a little diamond or a picot trim. You can see that little picot trim there. From here, I'm going to sew up to the top of that picot trim to my outermost 15 O seed bead. That gets that little picot trim or that little triangle or that little diamond of beads. From there, I'm going to add a 4mm bead onto my needle, and I'm going to add 2 15-0 seed beads. So I made my little diamond here. I added a 3mm crystal and 2 15s. I'm going to sew over to the next triangle that I created. And when I sew over, you can see it's going to kind of fold it up. I'm going to be going to the up to the top of the 15-0 that's on the other side, sewing towards the triangle that I created. What that's going to do, as you can see, is kind of pull it in. I'll move my thread to the outer edge so you can see. I need to create that little diamond again, so I'm going to add in a 15-0, which will be my 4th bead in my right angle weave. I'm going to sew through that top 15-0 bead then in my rotation. Give a nice tight pull. That makes our diamond. And I'm going to pull nice and tight to get my crystal in there. You can see that's going to create that little nice triangular effect that Anna had going on. From here, my thread and needle are coming out the side here. What I'm going to do is add my next crystal, add my 2 15s, going over to the next triangular section here, that next little triangle. Again, I'm going to sew through the 15 towards the triangle that my thread is coming out of. Give a nice tight pull, add another 15 onto the needle, and sew back through the 15 that's closest to the crystal on, so I'm progressing to the next section. So I'm sewing it towards the next little section. That's going to get my next little diamond of seed beads. Again, I'm coming out the top. On goes a crystal, then 2 15s, going over to that next little triangle, sew through the 15 that's in the middle of those beads towards myself, add 1 more 15 onto your needle, and sew away from yourself through the 15 that's next to the 3mm crystal. Give nice tight pulls at each little section here. At the end then, you can see all I need to do is actually add my crystal. So I already have my 2 seed bead diamonds, so what I have to do is just add my crystal. I'm going to add a crystal and come over here into my section of my 15-0, go into that first or that top 15. Give a nice tight pull. You can see that makes that nice little kind of tight little basket almost that's sitting on top of the ring. From here, I'm going to reinforce that center by adding in thread going through that entire center ring. So when I say center ring, what I mean is I'm going through the 3mm crystals as well as all of my 15-0s. They're at the corner between the 3mm. So I'm sewing around nice and around in a circle. And that's going to tighten it up. At this point now, you're done adding crystals and you're ready to do your base. If you want to add a little bit more bling, I had sitting here just to show you. This is a Monty, a Rose Monty in the SS12. So it's an SS12 Rose Monty. If you want to and you want to add a little bit more bling, you can even drop one of those and sew it right along the top of your ring. From here, then we're going to actually do the base of our bracelet. The base of our bracelet, again, sits on top of that little netted right angle weave. And we're going to do ladder stitch from one grouping of 2 beads over to the grouping of 2 beads on the opposite side. Knowing where my stop bead is, that's where I want to end. So I'm going to look where the stop bead is, know that I want to end my ladder stitch along those 2 beads. So I'm going to start at the 2 beads that are opposite. To do so, I need to get my thread and needle back to those 2 beads there. you're just going to retrace some thread, sewing along the lines, so that way your thread and needle come out exactly where you want them to be. When I retrace my thread, I make sure that I don't make any new thread lines. I'm just doubling up the thread in areas. And what that's going to do is make sure that you don't see any thread exposed. So I'm basically re-sewing back through the project. And we're going to get ready then to do our ladder stitch. So again, I'm going to sew through those 2 11-0 seed beads and then come out. When I come out the 11-0 seed beads then, and get ready to join in the ladder stitch. So your thread and needle should be coming out the 11-0 seed beads that are across from the 11-0 seed beads that sit next to the stop bead. It's now time for the ladder stitch. So the amount of rows that you're going to do for your actual ladder stitch along the base of the ring is going to depend on your ring size. You may want to have a ring sizer close by and handy, or one of your fingers to try it on. So to learn ladder stitch, we have a ladder stitch video if you need to, but it's very, very simple. I have 2 beads that are sitting and going to be the base of my ladder stitch. Those are those 2 11-0 seed beads that my thread is coming out of. You'll notice that the band is 2 beads wide, the entire length of it. To create it, I have my 2 beads that my thread is coming out of, and I'm going to add 2 more beads. I'm going to sew back through the 2 beads that the thread is coming out of, and I'm doing so in a circular fashion, so my needle is coming out exactly where my thread is starting. And I'm going to pull that nice and tight. From there, ladder stitch sews through in a circular fashion the 2 beads that you just added. So the thread's going to be exposed along the sides. From here, add 2 more beads onto your thread and needle. Circle through the 2 beads that the thread is coming out of, and then sew through the 2 beads that you just added. Again, I'll do that one more time. Add 2 beads in a circular fashion, sew through the 2 beads the thread is coming out of. Give nice tight pulls, and then sew through the beads that you just put on. When you look at the ladder stitch, you'll notice that every other little bridge thread there along the side of the beads will have 1 thread, 2 threads, 1 thread, 2 threads. So when you look along the side of the actual ladder stitch, you'll know if you're doing it correctly if you alternate with the amount of threads that you have exposed and showing on the side. It should alternate between 2, 1, 2, 1. I'm going to go in and create the ladder stitch, making it longer, and I'll show you then how to connect onto the side of the actual little beaded bead here that sits on the top. So we can fold over the ladder stitch, connect it to the other side, and finish off our cluster ring. So I have about 22 rows of my ladder stitch completed. And what I'm going to do is connect the 2 sides of my actual ring. So I have my 22 rows of ladder stitch, gives you about an 8 1/4 size ring. And I have the thread coming out along the same side as the actual stop thread or the starter thread there. What I'm going to do is sew through, like I was continuing right angle weave, and ladder stitch, and instead of adding my 2 seed beads, sewing through the 2 seed beads, going into the same side that the thread is on the opposite side of our little cluster. From here, then to pull it nice and tight like ladder stitch, I'm going back through in a circle, the 2 beads that my thread was originally coming out of. And you can see then that's 2 threads kind of pulled tight, sew it up. From here, I'm going to go back through those 2 beads that are closest to the cluster, pull nice and tight, go back through the 2 beads then that are along the ladder stitch. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is pull off the little stop bead. When I pull off the stop bead then, we're going to go ahead and knot off the thread towards the back of the project, knotting off the actual starter thread and ending thread. I don't want to see it at all, so what I'm going to do is go through my whole baseline of beads till I'm right over to the starter thread. As you bring the threads around and have them meet here at the end, you're just going to take your 2 threads then together, and I've tied them together about 4 times, And because the knot is next to the green beads, you really don't see it at all. If you are using a thread that you do see, you may want to put a needle back on, kind of tie it off then, and bring your threads to the very back or the bottom of the actual cluster. From here, I'm going to take my thread burner or my threads up. You can do a little glue if you want, and I'm going to burn down the edges of the very ends of that thread. From there, the fun cluster ring is completed, and you can have fun kind of making a bunch of these. Once you get going, the pattern is really simple. They'll line up really, really quickly, and you can have fun. It's amazing kind of how much variety you have with the look of it, with the different gemstones versus the actual seed beads as well too. Bringing out the color versus kind of making it blend in, and the difference of the crystals versus the gemstones and the two different looks that you get. It's fun to create in a lot of different ways. You can go back again if you need the materials to the beginning of the video, to the little kind of drop down underneath, or to the description of the different products that you can grab to create with us here at PotomacBeads.com. As always, I really enjoy kind of having fun and making other people's designs, having Anna give me the opportunity to do this design, and so I thank her for that, and hopefully you guys have fun creating this fun cluster pendant as well. As I said, if you need any materials, you can shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com. You can also subscribe to this YouTube page. You'll get regular updates then when we do the different YouTube videos, whether or not it's product updates or new videos, or just really what's going on in the beading world and kind of keeping you guys informed. The other way that you can stay connected with us is by visiting us on Facebook and Instagram, kind of trending and looking at it there, as well as joining our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. If you join the Facebook group for beading and jewelry making there, you get a wonderful chance to interact with some great people that love to design, create, and make wonderful, fabulous artworks of jewelry. You can also, like I said, ask questions or interact there, asking questions, showing designs, and letting us know what you're doing with our beads as well. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and have fun making this fun little cluster ring.